One. Hi, this is Damien Marie AtHope, and I am an axiological atheist, which can simply be understood as a value theory or a value science atheist. Or said another way, I am an axiologist, a value theorist, and I'm also approach atheism in that thinking. And so I'm here with a guest, and could you go ahead and tell us your name and a little bit about you?
Hello, my name is Maurizio Bisogno. I have a solid background in philosophy. I dedicated to philosophy since my teenage years. I do philosophical counseling, I do research, independent research, and I write some books, like the last one is my introduction to philosophy. That I'd like to talk about today with you.
Wonderful. Yeah, I have a real enjoyment for philosophy. To me, it was at first just something to defend myself. But I later started to see, well, this has an application more for all of my life. Could you go ahead and tell us a little bit about your book?
Right. As I said, the title of the book is Introduction to Philosophy from the Pre-Socratic to Aristotle. The book is divided in three main parts. There is a first part which introduces philosophy, the importance of philosophy for the Western world, which means for our culture in particular, and also then the second part, which actually is the first part of the book, is dedicated to the philosophers who came before Socrates. As we all know, Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, with those who came before. And there is the third part, which is there are a series of articles on issues of contemporary issues, and it's not an application of a philosophy, it is how philosophy would affect the way you see things.
Oh, that's interesting.
So this is mainly, it's for the book, and I worked at it for a long time, but it's not very big. It's only a few 200 pages, but it's very big fun.
Yeah, but it's still, it sounds like it's a pretty interesting thing. I know a lot of people find it hard to approach philosophy, but it sounds like that you've given a good introduction. Could you tell us a little bit about, like you said, the beginning explains like the value of philosophy. Could you explain like just the highlights of what you think the value of philosophy is?
Yeah, so everything, we can say everything concerning ideas as in a way of knowing the world, it started in this time before Socrates. The philosophers of this time have given us the fundamental questions that our philosophers developed. Now, the importance for our world is that before the modern times, before the days,
You're kind of hanging up. Your video. I think you better try again, maybe. Try disconnecting and reconnecting. Looks like we have a little technical difficulty going on. Joy of internet. We're going good. Hey, when that happens. But we'll be back together again. It's important to really address these things on philosophy, though, because you know, we like to think that we know things, or science knows things, you know, but we don't often think about what it is to know, or how we have ways of knowing, or even that we have ways of testing what we think we already know. And I think that too much is assumed and given without a lot of thought. And so, to me, it's really important to bring up philosophy, because it allows us to step back and reanalyze. I mean, a lot of people, you know, in the atheist movement are skeptics, and they approach it from that mindset. I approach it from the mindset of a rationalist. I like to understand. And I see philosophy basically as, for me, the process of desiring to understand. Hey, you back? All right. Looks like we can go ahead and finish. So you were can you go ahead and your signal? There you go. You back?
It doesn't seem. I'm back on the network website. Usually I have a very good.
Yeah, it's definitely more your connection, because my connection's perfectly fine. So it's not the connection.
Yes, my connection betrayed me.
Yeah, that's fine. So just go ahead and you got cut off on the value of philosophy. Just go ahead and restate it. I was saying when you were gone that to me the value of philosophy is because we talk a lot about what science knows or what we think we know, but we don't talk enough about analyzing how we know it, why we know it, what it is to know something, how could you know something. And so I think that philosophy really aids in that. But go ahead and tell us what your ideas on it.
So what I'm trying to say is that the nucleus of all the disciplines that we have nowadays in the various departments of universities in the fields of knowledge, of what we can know, the question of what we can know is also start there, which means there's a difference between opinion and epistemic.
Hey, your signal has gone out again. This is really too bad. This is frustrating. Trying to do an interview. What can we do? But anyway, so it is important to know how we know things. It is important to know the epistemic, attitudes of ideas and our attitudes about them. It's important to know even someone who's doing science, that they have the right epistemic attitudes. Generally they will, because it's already set out as the preamble for things like the scientific method or anything. I mean, we don't talk about what their things are, but they're there. So hopefully this is better. It's really too bad, because I really do want to talk about this with you. But let's...
I'm very sorry, you never have to... I've got a very fast connection. I don't know what's happening today. I don't know if it's today. Tips dropping out. I'm afraid that's not what it is a bit. If it doesn't, it's a bit frustrating for me to because I have to restart again and all that.
Yeah, it is frustrating, especially since I think that you have some good things to say, and it would be nice to actually hear them.
So, that's basically what I, as a first element, as in the importance for our world. But we have to understand that all this education system, right, it's based on what philosophy was. The academy, the Lyceum, was founded by philosophers in Greece.
Right.
And then we developed that. The branches of knowledge, like rhetoric, logic, and methodology to know, they were developed down there. So my attempt is to show in this book the originator. So those thinking aspects that they have stayed, they've inspired the rest of our research. For example, after this phase with the Socrates, we have to focus the shift onto the person. So to know thyself, to know yourself.
Right.
So this, you can say, but that we have a psychology today to know ourselves. Well, that is true and it's not true because psychology is a science, it's not a philosophy. And I think you were saying that we do science, but we do not stop and think beyond.
Right. I was saying that I find it funny, especially since I know more about philosophy now, that I took psychology in school. Psychology, sociology, a little bit of criminology, a little bit of teaching, a little bit of intervention and drug therapy, but addiction, that's what I'm talking about. But yeah, I now realize that a lot of stuff was offered with in explaining it only from a science perspective, not realizing all the things that, in a sense, they're accepting without thinking. You know, because what I mean by that is they don't analyze. They don't analyze why do we know this? How do we know this? How do we know that it's quality, even if we think we know it? What exactly proper epistemic attitude should we have toward this evidence?
Yes. I wanted to add something about the psychology stuff, right?
Yeah.
And how philosophy has an important role to play in knowing what human being is and how his behavior. Before all the technology, the scientific methodology developed, let's say after the Middle Ages, especially in the 19th century, right? The guide to know it yourself was philosophy.
Right.
What does it mean, philosophy? Philosophy is an approach that uses reason, that uses a look, for example, outside or inside, but by using reason. I'll give an example. This, a few days ago, I wrote a short article, and I gave it the title From Failure to Antitheism. This article, using only the way philosophical approach to yourself, developed a psychological improvement. I mean, by starting from a feeling of failure to a reason process, which is typical of philosophy, we reached a condition of enthusiasm. I'm not going to talk into it because it's not the point. But what I'm trying to say is that need to give to the way philosophy know the due importance. This importance has conditioned the way we know nowadays in science.
Correct.
We know that there is a branch of philosophy that thinks over science. When a scientist at the surface and thinks, for example, about bioethics, right? He can do certain things. So his technology allows him to do certain things. But if he stops and thinks to decide to go on those things, how far can he go? What is responsibility toward himself and humanity in what he's doing? He's already a philosopher. So he's going beyond. It's this Greek word meta. When you say metaphysics, you say metaphysica. You're going beyond. Because when you start going beyond what you're doing, when you start and think about what.
Right, when you start thinking about the what, the why, the where, the how.
The where, yes, where we're going, how we're going, what is allowed to me as a scientist, what consequences the application of, for example, of my research will have in society, for humanity in general. This is one aspect. But there are other aspects of philosophy. Nowadays, politics, for example, it's reduced to something that we don't really understand because it's so banal. But politics, for example, it's something very important. The Greek philosopher spent a lot of time thinking how society should be organized, how to rule the society, who should have part in decision making. So they developed theories, they developed suggestion of a possible society. They influenced right? Because to participate in the polis, the city, for a Greek was important.
Right.
So,
democracy.
Democracy, yeah. So we would do our democracy, we can use. So they thought, what would be the best political system? They thought of it. But of course, we have also other thinkers. They came afterwards, and they developed. It's not saying that they've solved the problem, but that's the point. The problem is never solved. That's why philosophy cannot stop. Because our existence, I think we said that in the first step, our existence is the problem. As in, it's not a given, a solution. Our existence is a problem to be continuously thought about, continuously to research about. So we find technological solution, political solution, we find a psychological solution. But we have to understand that the philosophy teaches you the attitude, the mental approach to go further in a certain way.
I agree. And like I said, I didn't take any philosophy classes. It's just I started, someone would challenge me on Facebook, and I wanted to defend myself. And so I just started looking more into, how would you address this? And then more I kept realizing the philosophy answer, for me at least, seemed to be able to approach it to where I could answer a lot of questions, or at least understand a lot of things in ways that I hadn't realized before.
Yes, what you say there is fantastic. Why? Because we could quote what the Greek had as dialectic.
Right.
Dialectic as the art of reasoning, as the art of conversation, which was separated from, Aristotle wrote this book, Rhetoric, which is separate from rhetoric, which is the art of persuasion. Right. So it's an art. That means that we can learn the structure of a discourse. And then when we talk to an audience, we have something orderly. We have something with a name. We have also a structure that's developed and it's not impromptu. So the more we bring in topics, the more we
I actually have a style I call dialectical rhetoric, where it's truth-seeking and it's done in a way that's motivational teaching. Because I believe that the truth is a thing that is often there, but how do you get truth into the minds of others is, for me at least, the benefit of rhetoric. It's the ability to take the idea and make it palatable, make it interesting, make it exciting, make it usable, make it valuable.
Yes, absolutely. We also, by doing what you said, by learning how to do that, we respect some aesthetical criteria as well.
Definitely.
Which means our discourse will be also beautiful.
Right.
Because we trying to create something. I don't know, sometimes in sport, for example, I like a lot soccer. Right?
I don't like any sports, but I hear you.
Well, that's just to give an example what I mean. It's like, it's not about winning or losing for some team. It's, for me, it's about watching how these 22 people in the field, they organize an action. And sometimes it's so beautiful to see that structure building up aesthetic, the enjoyment of watching something beautiful.
Right.
So, a beautiful speech, a beautiful discourse gives you not only that, oh, I learned something, or I have something, I got something, but also the pleasure.
Oh, definitely.
And when you see certain chat shows that have no order, they have no balance, they have no, how do you say, anything beautiful to give you, you really lose the sense of what communication is.
Oh, right. And that's why I think that it's already known that good orators, or I would say good rhetoricians, good orators have the ability to persuade people, sometimes even to bad ideas. I mean, even Hitler got people to believe in nonsense of Nazism. So, I mean, rhetoric can be massively persuasive. I think that's why I like to have mine be dialectical rhetoric. Thus, it's always under the thing of trying to be truth-seeking.
Yes, I absolutely see what you expressed there, which is says you cannot just use rhetoric as a tool. It has to be a philosophical approach.
Right, right. With
the other aspect, that's fantastic. You see, the danger of using the technology, and that's the other topic, because rhetoric could be just a technique and a technology.
Yeah, right.
The technology
is so advanced today, right? We can do robots, we can do unbelievable things. We have machines here that a few years ago were enormous. Now we can carry in our pocket.
Exactly.
Technology is very advanced.
Yeah.
But there is a problem. Because when we, and you know better maybe than I do, when you see how people approach technology without thinking, just consume it, you see the damage that technology can do to what we are.
Well, exactly. That reminds me of like Facebook. People say, "Oh, Facebook." People spend hours on there doing nothing. Well, I have a lot of people that follow me, and I guarantee what I put out is quality, or at least I try to. I try to make sure that it is a high standard, because I'm not putting out, just popcorn for people to snack on. I want to give them steaks, or teach them how to, make their own food. I mean, I want to give them the stuff that I've learned. I feel like if people could understand the power of philosophy, not only could they help, understand things, I agree with you, it's helped change my life. And then I realize it can also change the lives of others. I see its value.
Yes. So, the philosophy gives the idea of complexity. So, you do not see just a thing, but you see a complex. Now, let's go back to this Aristocratic for a moment.
Yeah.
Because at least two of them, they trying to say, we see all these things happening in the world. All these phenomena. There's all this continuous of happening and continuous change. And then the question is there anything underlying it? What does it create continuity? What is the unity beyond this multiplicity? You know, this simple, original question has been carried on until nowadays. I want to just make a small example and trying to say what he says. Karl Marx in the beginning, preface to his Capital book, right? He says, when I look at a capitalistic society, what I see is an enormous amount of commodity.
Yeah.
Commodity. That's all. That's the way. That's what I see.
Right. Overproduction.
And that's what we see today. If you go in a supermarket, or if you go in a shopping place, or if you go in a town, or if you go there, we see commodity. Everything is commodity. The question is, what is ruling that? What is that? What is governing? Which are the laws that adjust all this production, consumption? What is the aim? So all that makes you think there must be something in it, something underlying these appearances. This is a question that is very contemporary. You know, it's not what it was taught in that time, so 2,400 years ago. When, for example, Parmenides says, there is two ways to know. It's one, the way of the appearance, so my senses, I stop to what I see, to what I hear, to what I smell, but there is another way to know, which is more difficult, even to understand how, but it's called the way of the truth. That is the truth. It's something that it doesn't show to your face immediately. You know, that's evidence, but the truth, which underlies all the appearances, it could be that there is that truth, it must be searched. And our search creates a lot of knowledge. Although that simple truth that everybody shares and accepts, we don't have it, you know? It's not, that knowledge has not been achieved yet. We are always in the process to expand. And I wanted, I was speaking to one of my professors 1 week ago. I know, but it's more like a human relation, I don't have academic, that's it. And it was the relationship between what I know and what I don't know. It's like this. The more I learn, the more I kind of feel a sphere. That sphere grows, right? Right. But what happens? The edges of that sphere, the perimeter of that sphere, creates what I know from what I don't know, grows as well. Paradoxically.
Right. So what's your...
The more I know, the less I know. As in, the things that I don't know, it looks like they grow. So, you know, because the perimeter between what I know and what I don't know grows with the sphere. See what I mean?
Well, I would say it a little differently. I would say that every object is doing that. In other words, every idea is doing that individually. I don't agree that it's a uniform thing. It's like a whole universe is what you're talking about. So the universe outside of the Earth, right? So everything else is a planet, and they're in a sense all moving away from each other at all times in all ways. In other words, there's no fixed point that I'm at. The Earth is also moving away. It may feel like if I look out from the Earth that everything else is moving and I'm not, but the truth is everything is moving. But what I mean by that is, the more we get knowledge, we stand on top of the blocks and can look over the wall or whatever. Well, once we do that, we now have seen more. So the tools that help us get to the place of knowledge also often helps us see that there actually is more to learn, is what you're saying. Or also that the more that you understand a thing, the more you see it has more parts. Because the deeper you look, let's say you keep looking through a microscope, there's something smaller in a sense. And I think that in that sense, it is true. I don't think it's that every idea then becomes unlimitless in its application to know, because I do think that some things are finite and some things are not. If I say the idea of knowing the redness of my beard, now you could find out, that the kind of chemicals that I use, the process I use, you could find out how those chemicals were made, where they came from, who did the work, how the work was originated, like you said, capitalism or socialism. You could look at all the parts. But eventually, the realm of that knowledge would hold a limit, because your starting point is limited. Limited on my goatee's color. Where if you have an idea like you're talking about of, what is our meaning for the universe, which to me is an axiological value judgment question. That's a different question that is a lot more expansive, because to me, our meaning is not fixed. In other words, our meaning for life as a 3-year-old is not the same as 30, not the same as 60, not the same as someone who's 100. Though the meaning at life at the different stages are going to change in different ways. So in that sense, I think that you're correct, the statement. But from my vantage point of the meaning of my life, that would be true. Because the more I learn, the more the meaning changes, or it grows, or develops, or expands, or has more understanding. And until I die, the meaning will keep growing. There will be no point where, in a sense, all meaning is achieved or something.
Yes, this is very interesting, and that's actually, you expounded it differently, but you expressed, I think, what I tried to say as well. That brings me to another point that is in this book, because it's not about my book, it's about this philosopher. I wanted to transmit the idea that if you know this philosopher, you're prepared to face all the topics of knowledge that we have developed so far nowadays. Know everything. If you know Democritus.
Yeah.
Democritus and his atomism, without a microscope, without bombarding the atom, he understood logically that if you keep dividing the matter, if ever was possible,
right,
to cut the matter and keep cutting, you reach a point where there is a part of that matter which is uncuttable, and he called it the atom.
Right.
Now,
that's kind of what I was saying. That's what I was saying about my theory.
It's fascinating, because it's like saying 2,400 years ago, somebody not only said that there is a matter, but he also told us that matter has a component which is pretty much uncuttable. I'm not talking about quantum physics and all that. No. That has guided our science for centuries. The other thing, for example, you said before that once you know, you reach it and you understand that the universe is it's much more expanded. But at that time, we only had this, and otherwise, the Big Bang Theory, before that was even taught. The universe starts from an explosion, and then the explosion and the expansion, and it continuously, but they said that as well. They said there's another thing which is very contemporary.
Well,
now,
yeah.
This is...
Go ahead. Go ahead. No, I was gonna interject, but I thought you were stopped. But anyways, Go on.
No,
I was going to say that I don't think that in the sense that he knew the atom. It's that he understood the breakdown of the presuppositions required for thinking or for things itself. That everything has, in a sense, that if you break it down into its parts, even like a lot of people will say they know things. Well, you know it because you believed it, some form of evidence or justification or warrant. The evidence being, to me, external in general, and then when I say justification and warrant, it could be reason or logic or something. But to me, without that, then you don't really have a right to say you know. You know what I'm saying? If you don't have any evidence and if you don't have any logic or justification, you could believe something, but you can't say you know it. And I think that people forget that they say no all the time when they don't really know. Another thing too is that an axiologist would immediately say, well, how much do you know? In other words, that I don't assume black and white, all or nothing, not know or everything. You know, you usually have levels of knowledge. You mean, you know, someone could be 10%, 20%, 30%, 40%. So like even if I said I have knowledge of this, well, how do you know that? Well, because of this evidence, the question is how quality is that evidence? If I say the National Enquirer is my evidence, or if I say, well, someone wrote it on a tree who carved it with a knife, it must be true. I mean, you know, that's not evidence.
Yeah, that brings to that what we said before, complexity, which is knowledge is something complex and also simple, let's say. Thinking, I see, this is, I don't want to bring everything back to this book because it's my book and all that.
Please do. That's why you're here.
My aim is that, by writing this, my aim is that to transmit the message, to bring people to be interested in those who have given birth, those who have started the process of knowing and what we have reached nowadays. They be a knowledge because we do not do, how do you say in import fund? They say science doesn't do anything like randomly. We don't decide to know this or that randomly. No. It's all built up in our desires to know what. For example, we want to know what the matter is made of. What's the origin of the world? We want to know if we can know. And if we can know, what we can know and how. So, that's one thing. For example, we do give a lot of importance to mathematics.
Right.
Since a while, right? Mathematics is a very important section of our knowledge. But Pythagoras is the first who said, if I understand the structure of a number, I do not understand just a number, something abstract. I understand the structure of reality.
Right.
This number talks to me about what it is. What it is understandable through the number. So this concept, that the importance of number, the ratio in numbers, it's a Pythagorean concept who started 200 years ago. We have developed Galileo Galilei much later. He said the language of nature is mathematics. If I want to understand nature, I have to read it through mathematics. And further on. So, we have developed concepts, we have deepened the knowledge, but that's the starting thing. So when we have a kind of an idea why, for example, somebody says everything is water, Thales. The first philosopher, no, Thales, is 6th century before Christ, says the world, everything in the world is made of water. We can't deny that nowadays, but do you deny that our body is majorly made of water?
Yeah, so it's like 70% water or something like that.
I'm not saying they have the right answer all the time. What I'm saying, their research, their understanding, they put down the right question to start to know it. They also attempted to give, by speculation, observation and speculation, they try to be answer. So,
and I do agree that they did that, and they're still doing that, especially I think when it's applied correctly. In other words, like to me, how I get reason is my only master. I'm a rationalist. And to me, if you look at the first thing that we do is he's talking about experience. So, but that doesn't, you don't do something to make yourself feel feelings. They happen automatically just by being awake and alive in the world. That happens. You become aware of those said senses. So that's a non-action thing. I believe that is where actually everything starts, is the non-action thing that we don't do, which is feel feelings. That just is an automatic generation, that we feel experience in a sense. Then to me, once we feel the experience, an automatic thing happens from that, is that we think about the experience because we are a being trying to survive in the world. So there's an automatic thing through evolution that we automatically think is to try to process because it's about survival. So if we can think fast and we can understand, then we can survive. Now, I think there's two types of thinking in the sense. There's the thinking that is the automatic generation, and then there's the process one that we call reason, where we actually analyze, in a sense, what we are thinking, not just the process of ideas generating, but these ideas start to be quantified into sets, into order, into structure, into a methodological way of understanding our thinking, which to me is reason. When reason becomes, in a sense, its highest thing, it becomes logic, because it becomes the most, in a sense, methodological. When that happens, then logic becomes the most methodological. It becomes math to me. And then from there, math becomes the most methodological use towards the natural world. It becomes physics. And then from there, you can get other sciences. But in a sense, to me, it goes back to the beginning presuppositions of what we're doing, and that people don't realize this or don't analyze it or think about how we know, why we know, and the process of knowing. I think that it affects how we view things. So, like, in other words, when you talk about numbers, so when you say numbers are the world, I don't see it that way. I see numbers as our methodological application to the world so that we can understand and quantify. In other words, just seeing a thing is not very useful for our minds because we process in a certain limited way. We're not a computer. We can't just analyze every 3D structure. We have to, in a sense, have ability of breaking it down so that our minds can comprehend. I think that that is done well in math. But what I'm saying is, to me, math is not starting in numbers. In other words, math doesn't prove itself. It's that reason, logic, thus proves the math. And especially when it's correctly applied. Because it's not like math has never made, an error in the history of math. There's been all kinds of stuff that they've quantified and tried to use math that doesn't always match the world 100%. But there are, depending on human error, like especially before there was computers, there's a lot more human error. But there's also a belief people have that somehow computers lack error. Well, computers are programmed by humans who start with error. So I think that there's an epistemic humility we need to have that we could be wrong.
Yeah, that brings us to the fact that our senses can be failing us. If I may go back to to another aspect of philosophy, which is when applied to if I do some counseling, right?
Right.
When philosophy is very efficiently applied, will bring a transformation. I do not think applied philosophy when it's really understood in a way. So that's one of my aim, not only conscious, a rational approach to life, which is fantastic. It's the awakening of the ability to be a philosopher, which that would not necessarily means to be a professional. You see, our level of understanding, you already said, we understand different, you say that the child,
right.
Different phases, right?
Oh, definitely.
It is has to do with, I think, with our conscious, our level of conscious, how we develop our ability to be conscious,
I
and
agree.
how we handle, you said emotions. So emotions, consciousness, these two elements that through philosophy can bring us to transformation. Suppose, as I said before in that article, suppose you have a difficulty. I do have difficulties all the time.
Right.
Suppose the one has a difficulty in approaching a certain situation, or a general phase of his life or her life, it's difficult. By going through certain aspects with philosophy, that can change. That can bring you to a higher empowerment. That can bring you to another level of understanding and of acting. Because, as the Stoics already knew, there is a connection between emotions, thinking, and behavior. So, it doesn't have, you don't have to be a trained psychologist to develop an understanding of this correlation. Emotions can block out your understanding, totally. If you are overpowered by a feeling, that feeling can black out completely the ability to understand. If you don't understand, your behavior is going to be, at the least, strange. But I'd say ineffective. Your behavior will not produce any of the results you expect. Actually, it can produce the opposite of what you want, or exacerbate your previous feeling. So there is this is philosophy as well. This is how, yes, this is the other aspect.
Well, I think there's people that are naturally therapeutic, in other words, naturally counselors. I think there's people that are naturally philosophers. I know my wife is, I would call a natural philosopher. She doesn't read philosophy, she doesn't think about it, but she's always thinking and processing the world the way a philosopher would. You know, so because to me, she does, I call it the hammer of truth. I watched her do it, and I figured it out. So she uses ontology, epistemology, and axiology, and always in that order. In other words, ontology, the thingness of things. She wants to ask questions or understand what is the thing that you're talking about, and what is its thingness quality. So asking exploratory questions into the qualities of a thing that you explain. So if you say, I believe in beliefs, or I have a belief, she would say, well, what do you mean by beliefs? Before she would get into the belief itself, in a sense. Because she wants to know, what do you mean by that when you use that word? Because some people mean it to mean just having an acceptance of an idea, and some people can mean it to mean that you have, magical claims or all kinds of stuff when you just say, I believe something. So it doesn't tell you enough information. And then the epistemology, like how do you know that and how can you know things? And then the axiology, which I use all the time, is the value of things. How do we know the value of things, and how do we assess value? Because if you can't assess value well, you won't get the quality and richness that things have. And I learned it by just watching her. So to me, she's my philosopher, but she's a natural philosopher. So I do agree that you can do both. I mean, just because nowadays we feel that everyone has to have a licensed degree to do something does not mean that only people with licensed degrees can do things. In other words, people can get a license to be a mechanic, but I know a lot of mechanics that are no license at all. And they're great.
First of all, you're lucky because you can share your conversation, your understanding with your partner. I think it's fantastic because it doesn't make you feel an alien,
right.
in the family.
Yeah, true.
Because it might happen that, the other partner do not share the same interest as we were talking about. So, you're a lucky person. And yes, to come back to the license thing, it's like, we have authorities that give authorities, right?
Yep.
But often, we just rely on authority in the sense that that person is authorized, right? But doesn't mean it's a good of what is authorized.
Exactly.
So it's a very, as you say, the value and all that. This is a difficult, we enter a difficult field there because I don't want to say it's useless.
I didn't say that. No, I didn't
say that. No, I know.
No, I want to make sure everyone else listening. One second. Anyone listening, I value people with education. So I'm just saying that the thought that only people with a certified education are educated, that I have not one class in philosophy, and I like to try any philosopher that feels that I can't talk to come and take me on, and I will go ahead and show you that I know philosophy, and I've never taken a class, so.
Yeah, no, we agree on this. It just was to say, without saying that negative thing, like, it is important to develop your ability to judge so that you can discern, right. You can make a selection when you are asking for services or for you have to understand the value of that person, the qualification and all that. This is also the other aspect of philosophy, to develop the ability to have an independent and mature judgment about reality. So you can filter what you're supposed to believe with what you think. So you decide what to believe, and you're not just fed. So this brings us also at the
Could you go ahead and explain that? Because I try to explain this to people too. You say it in a way that's almost how I say it, but a lot of people in the atheist community make points to that we don't choose to believe. Belief is an automatic thing that we have once we're presented and our mind accepts. I agree with that, but I also agree with what you're saying. If we have a mind, though, that holds itself at bay and goes, wait a minute, I don't want to just believe anything that my mind... In other words, just because my mind thinks something doesn't mean I want to accept that that's a quality thing. Like I was saying, I realize that thought can happen sometimes that it's not rational.
No, I see, but I don't think we have to accept what we believe all the time. We have to filter. I just want to say this, and this was the result of that article about failure and enthusiasm, is that distinction between, for example, good sense and common sense. If I express common sense, that's what I have. I have beliefs that can come to me from the tradition, from the society, from the environment, from media bombardment. This is my common sense. Everybody believes that. I believe that. If I develop a good sense, I am in the process of applying what? An interpretation, balanced interpretation of reality, emotion, and therefore judgment. Now, this is another story. Interpretation, hermeneutics. At the end of the day, somebody can say everything is an interpretation. You hear that all the time saying everybody has an opinion. Of course, one must have some opinion. Sure. Everybody has an opinion, but that's not the point.
Exactly.
The point is there are different levels of opinion. There's different degrees of certainty.
True, I agree.
If you, Damien, are so concentrated, focused, you work on a certain type of understanding, even if your opinion, it's not, in your interpretation, it's not 100% certain, your level of certainty is superior to one person that doesn't do the work on that thing.
I agree.
He might have an impression, he might have an intuition, but he doesn't have what stands behind that higher level opinion. So, interpretation. Everything is interpretation. We interpret continuously, but we do not have all the same level. The certain interpretations are, let's say, superior, are better, are more, let's say like that, if we want to, than others.
Well, people all the time that there's at least two types of certainty. I mean, there's more than that, but there's at least two types that are generally used, and that is that we have psychological certainty, which a lot of people have, when they say they know something, but that just means that my mind, like the belief that my mind has accepted that proposition fully, or to some high amount. Then you have epistemic certainty, which is just the highest quality available, but is not like an absolute certainty. It's just like if we say I know I exist at an epistemic level. I mean, I can only assess my what is available to assess. I'm limited by my own mind trying to figure itself out and the world. Doesn't mean I'm inaccurate. Also, my mind's not limited to me. I have you. I have other people to talk to interact, to learn, and develop with. So to me, the epistemic certainty, though, is the certainty I think of when science says it knows something. In a sense, it's not saying it can't ever change upon new evidence. It's just saying that to the standard we have now, this is what we know.
Yes, that's what we know. That's the thing. And we can say no with a certain meaning.
Right.
That no has another value that if somebody who doesn't... Okay, so we have established that, but then I'm starting feeling a bit tired.
Okay, no problem. Yeah. Well, go ahead.
I think this conversation is very important, and I hope, to me, it was very important. I would have, there is a lot of things that, because this is very, a very fundamental aspect of life. Approaching life with the philosophy. For example, I would have also developed a topic like understanding of society and how society is organized nowadays, as in the need to know the world we are in, but not as only as at a metaphysical level, also at a practical level. Why? Because we are also involved in necessities. We are in a world in which necessities have a certain durable existence. We can't eliminate necessities.
Right.
We do not. We have a tendency in philosophy to forget the kingdom of necessities. What I mean by that is that any philosophy will not be complete, or will not have its big importance if neglected the fact that we are not only men of interests, as in we do not only have to satisfy a desire to know, but there is a necessity to know. There is a need to know. Why? Because we have to satisfy the necessary side of our existence. And by that I mean the problem of work. For example, we are not free to not work, or we work, how the work is organized, how our energy is bringing power and wealth not to us. There's a lot of questions we could talk about. I do not want to end. I just want to briefly say that our intelligence does not have to neglect the fact that we live in a society in which there is also the fact that as a human beings, we're not always we're rarely put in a situation to blossom.
Well, yeah.
We have to satisfy most of the, sacrificing a lot of our time to feed the need that involves our existence.
Right, but I think that some people
we don't have to neglect that.
Right. And I was going to say, I think about that word need. I think that when most people hear that, they think of only food or shelter. But they don't realize that as a human, we're social animals that are very emotional. So because of that, emotions have to come into play. In other words, that what we think as aesthetic as like an afterthought is actually our well-being. That if we didn't have, in other words, if you had an all blank room and you wore all blank clothes and you talked in all blank language, we would be dying inside because we are highly creative, highly emotional. So I'm just saying about needs is I feel like people, they only like, well, as long as you have food, you're good. There's a lot of people in prison that have food and that have, in a sense, safety of shelter and are not doing good. I mean, doing good is more than just a basic of necessity. It's well-being that happens only to me when two factors are at least somewhat balanced, safety and comfort. And the reason we need comfort as a need, not as an abstract, is because psychologically we can't survive otherwise. In other words, like if you see this, you put a person in solitary confinement, they almost always become mentally disabled or mentally deranged in some way because it is a need, not a want, to have connection with people. It is a need, not a want, to have the psychological well-being.
Yeah, it's the same to say if people are forced to work 10 hours in a alienated job, have energy for anything else, after a certain time, their being becomes limited.
That's right.
Their stress level is very high, and they're prone to illness of a certain kind.
There you go.
We are complex beings, and we need to explore all the aspects of our existence. And this will bring us to a very deep
and I would say that can't happen until we truly eliminate capitalism. Capitalism, I think, is anti-humanity in the sense that it puts humanity in a way of thinking that is not for our well-being. In other words, to me, capitalism uniformly never produces well-being. It produces well-being for a few, always with the suffering of the many.
But that's it, because the aim of this economy is not to create well-being.
No, it's not.
Unless that goodness, it's useful so that you can continue to give what they want. So, Damien, really, we will open here another very large topic, and I think maybe one day we can have another conversation.
Absolutely.
And go. I hope somebody enjoyed what we did here, but because I enjoyed a lot, and I think it should be done more.
Yes. Yeah, well, we need people that are thinkers to think out loud in front of people, because that's when other people can learn how to be thinkers too, or be excited about thinking. I know that I didn't know the joy of talking philosophy until I started talking to philosophers and realized, oh wow, this is fun when we can actually talk about ideas in a real way. And I really appreciate your time.
Thank you, David. And thank you to everybody who was there. Maybe there is somebody. I'm very happy somebody was there. And I don't want to do an advertisement, but remember to my booth. Anyway.
Yes. And
thank you I'm very happy to have met you in the first place, and now this is a good confirmation that it was a great thing. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time. And I'm going to go ahead and